Hey everyone, this will be a quick one, and this isn't a stock that I own. It's a stock that I've owned in the past, and I did a video about it about a year ago called Intrepid Potash, and it has less than 500 views. So let's talk about it. Uh, Tariffs are stupid, and people who think tariffs are great are usually stupid too. Tariffs almost never work, and they generally almost always uh, end up causing more economic damage than they're supposed to benefit, and they end up losing more jobs than they create. And because the other side doesn't just sit around and do nothing, they usually retaliate, as Canada is going to do now. And just because it's a stupid idea doesn't mean that people aren't going to benefit from it. I don't like to trade on the headlines because politicians are erratic and they do silly things, and especially in the previous 4 years under this administration. So I'm not going to bank on them doing things that make sense or are logical because they haven't shown a history of that. However, if you were to bet on what's going on with the tariffs, a lot of industries are going to be hurt. And if you want to make money on that, that's on you. That's fine. I'm not a person who judges that, but let's talk about how that it would affect certain stocks and benefit others. So, as I said, tariffs are always stupid. They never work, and they cause more harm than good. And there's this famous tariff that came about in the 1930s called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. And if you ask any economist, they will say this is one of the causes of the Great Depression because they wanted to protect American interests, and they enacted this tariff, and it made it harder to export U.S. goods, and generally everyone suffered. Then we had the Great Depression, which was the worst economic crisis in U.S. history. Thank you, tariffs. Um, so first of all, a lot of things that are tariffed, businesses find ways around it. So during the war in Yugoslavia, um, the cars that they made, those Yugos, those ugly cars, were still being made because uh, even when people are shooting at each other, if there's money to make, somebody will find a way to make it. So during the previous 4 years under Donald Trump, they enacted a tariff on China, and then China retaliated by putting a big tariff on soybeans, which American farmers weren't happy about. But farmers were still selling soybeans. They just weren't getting great prices for it. So what happened there? So you grow crops in this part of the country in the middle, and then generally they would ship it to here to the port of Long Beach, and then it would get shipped out to China. But because of the tariffs, you couldn't ship things to China because there's a huge tariff. So what do they do with all that grain? They didn't just let it sit and rot in a warehouse. They didn't pour it into the river. What do they do with it? Well, instead of sending it by rail to the port of Los Angeles, port of Long Beach, and sending it to China, they would send it down to Texas, the port of Houston, or the port of New Orleans, and then they would send it to Brazil. And why did they send it to Brazil? Well, if you look at the map, let me use my little tool here. So instead of sending the grain here, you sent it here, and then from here, they would put it on a ship and send it to Brazil here. Why would they do that? Well, they would offload it onto a port here, and then another ship, a Brazilian ship, would pick it up here and then would put it on a ship, and then they would take it to China. And but now it would be Brazilian soybeans, not U.S. soybeans. And you're saying that doesn't make any sense. You're right, it doesn't. And it's not legal, but that's what happened. So if this is U.S. wheat, which is very short, and U.S. soybeans, which is very short from here to China, and then you put it on a ship here, you unload it in Brazil, and then some Brazilian guy puts it on a ship and says it's Brazilian wheat and then ships it here, now you avoid the tariffs, right? So nobody gets the money except the shipping companies. Because if you look at the distance from here to China is a lot shorter than here to here and here to China. And so I predicted, and I made some money on some shipping stocks, that this would happen. This is called transshipping. It's very common, and it would increase the amount of miles that shipping companies have. And so I thought rates would go up, and I did okay on some companies that did dry bulk shipping. And with the Russian sanctions and stuff like that, I think I had posted a video about a year ago also on Scorpio tankers, which ended up being a double. And I sold a bunch, and now it's come down again, and I'm not buying more. But I think it'll come back. And I had the same hypothesis that with what's going on with the sanctions in Russia, that you'd have these longer trade routes, and you'd have a lot of this transshipping for the Russians to avoid these sanctions, and that would benefit these companies that transport either crude oil or finished product like product tankers. And so far, it's borne out. So why am I bringing that up again? So about a year ago, I did a video on Intrepid Potash, and it's only got 500 views, but the reasoning is still the same here. And at 29, I did not like it. And I think at one point it got down to like $20 or $21. And then I bought some and sold it at 23 or 24. And I saw some other stuff that was more appealing. And then I think it got down to like 17 or 18. And uh, yeah, so some people made more money on it when it came back. And I don't like it at this price, but it's interesting because one of the products that is going to be subject to sanctions by Canada is potash. So they're going to put a uh, tax, I believe, on exports of potash. And that's sort of in retaliation. Justin Trudeau said it, Canada provides nickel, oil, blah, blah, blah. And he mentioned potash, and you probably don't know what potash is, but here's a US company that trades potash. So, what is potash? Well, I mentioned in the video, but it's a mineral. Let's see if I have a picture of it. It's pink, and it's a mineral, and it is used for certain types of crops that we grow in the US, especially corn. And we grow a lot of corn in the US. And if you look at the production of potash around the world, you don't even see US on here at all. So Canada makes about a third of it. You got Russia and Belarus with almost another 40%. You've got China that brings it up to 50%. So if U.S. farmers need potash, and you've alienated China and Russia and Belarus, which is a Russian ally, and now you're going to face these tariffs from Canada, you don't have much places left to get potash. And potash is it's a mineral, it's heavy, it's expensive to ship, and during low points in the cycle, you might get $200 a ton, and at high points in the cycle, you might get $800 a ton. But they ship it by tons, not by pounds. So it's very expensive to ship because you have to ship it long distances, and it's very heavy, and the price per ton is pretty low. So it's expensive to ship. So if you can get it from Canada by rail, you would do it. You wouldn't bring it over from Russia or China or Israel or any of these other countries because it's very expensive to ship. So how does that help Intrepid Potash? Well, here's a map of the potash mines. Uh, so, as I said, about a third of the potash in the world comes from Canada, and generally we ship it to U.S. farmers by rail. And if they raise the prices on that, that's going to be tough. Uh, uh, Australia, it's very far to ship. Argentina, Brazil, also very far to ship. And these aren't very big mines, but they're larger than they should be because they just highlight the whole state. But if you look at Utah and Arizona and New Mexico, there's very small deposits there. It's all one company, and that's Intrepid Potash. Actually, there should be one here in Wisconsin, which they're trying to open, but they've run into lawsuits and everything from people who don't want you taking water from the Great Lakes to do that because it's very polluting. But anyway, so this is a little bit inaccurate, but yeah, most of the U.S. production, which is very small, comes from this area. So the two companies, Nutrien and whatever the other one is in Canada, I forget, are about a third of the entire production of potash in the world. And one is, I believe, $15 billion company, and I can't remember what size the other was last time I checked. But potash is 300 million, so it's a little piker. They can't dictate price, but it is in the U.S. And if they're going to be raising the prices to ship it from here, it might benefit. So let's turn that off. And right, so potash, as I mentioned, it's a thing that you use for crops like corn, and it's a mineral. And there's two ways they mine it. Uh, this is the first way. It's conventional mining, where you use big machines and you dig it out, and then you bring it to the surface with giant construction equipment. The less expensive way, which is what Intrepid Potash generally does, is this what they call solution mining. So you drill a hole here, you pump water down into where the minerals are, and then it's a salt, so water and salt dissolves. Then you pump it out, and then you bring it to the surface and you let it dry out, and then you have potash. So this mentioned method with the conventional mining is way more expensive than this method, and Intrepid Potash uses mostly this. But during the war in Ukraine, when prices got very high, they switched to a lot of this conventional mining, and that's when I sort of lost interest, because you're increasing production. You're doing it more expensive than you have been. And generally, with these commodity companies, my friends call them commodity shitcos. You can make some money, but they're very cyclical. And so you have to time it right, because, for instance, energy had been losing money for more than 10 years. And then all of a sudden it became profitable and you started making money. But, if you bought it just because it was cheap, you would be waiting 10 years for it to turn around. The uranium people keep telling us uranium is just around the corner, but some of them have been waiting 20 years for uranium to turn around. So I don't like to bet on that. And when potash prices shot up, these guys expanded production, which I thought was a terrible idea, because they're not the only ones who make potash, and the people in Canada started making more potash, and prices went down. And if the war in Ukraine ever ends, it's not like there was a shortage of potash before the war. So what are you stuck with? So generally, what you want to do is find somebody who's an efficient capital allocator, and when times are good, they sock away the money, and then when times are bad, they buy up other plots from competitors who aren't doing well. Generally, what you don't do is what they did and what Nutrien did and what everyone else did, which is expand production to try to cash in on the money. But that's why these cyclical companies have these huge ups and downs, because they don't act rationally. Anyway, so what's so interesting about Intrepid Potash? So this is what it was trading at. It's 26, and I think when I did the video and I said I wasn't interested, it was 29. So it's a little cheaper than that. But if you look at the market cap, it's 347, and the enterprise value is 310. So what does that mean? It means that it does not have debt. So if this enterprise value was more than the market cap, it would mean that you look at the price of the stock, but it has debt, and so you would add it to this. But if the enterprise value is smaller than the market cap, that means it has no debt. So commodity companies are generally shitty businesses to be in, but if you have one that's no debt, it's likely to survive. And this one might benefit under the sanctions, because, as I said, potash is very cheap and it's very expensive to ship. And so a company, the only US one that I'm aware of that is local, could benefit from this. I'm trying to avoid commodity shitcodes and just find long-term compounders, so I probably won't buy in this. But if you wanted to play the sanctions in a way, this would be a way to do it, and look for other companies that are sort of uh, have a geographical advantage and may benefit from uh, the tariffs situation. So this isn't for me, but if you want to check out the previous video, I go into more about potash and what advantage these guys have. But 347 is very interesting, because if you look at how much capital expenditures they made to acquire the mines and get them up to speed, and investments to improve them and things like that, it's probably way more than 347. So you're essentially getting this for less than they paid for it, and it could benefit And they also have this water business, which sort of isn't represented in the name, but they sell water to frackers. And if you look at where they are in the desert, water in the desert is hard to come by. So if you can sell that to frackers, you can do okay. And last time I think I checked, they were making like 20 million a year on that. So on the water business, that's okay. And then if you add the potash business, it's okay. I don't think it's very well run. And the CEO had to step down recently. He had some kind of accident and was hospitalized. And then they put an interim CEO. And I haven't followed it lately, but yeah, you don't want problems when you invest in commodity companies. But I don't own this. I don't think I will unless the price gets really cheap. But it's one to think about if you're into that kind of thing. So yeah, this is what the solution mining looks like. So it was pumped out of the ground and they put it into these ponds to let it evaporate, and the different colors represent different stages of how it's drying, and they're harvesting the salt. And as you can see, this is not green area. So if you have water rights here and there's a fracker nearby who wants water, there's not a lot of options for them. So that's why the water business is doing well. And as you can see, this is the desert. So when they pump it out and throw it on the ground, the sun dries it for them. Whereas the Canadians who use this solution mining method, Canada's a lot colder than US, so they can dry it, but they use natural gas to evaporate off the water. And that works, but it's more expensive. Even though natural gas is cheap now, it's not cheaper than the sun, which is free. And so this should have a price advantage over Canadian potash producers, but at times they've been um, run so inefficiently that the Canadians have been able to produce it cheaper. So there's no excuse for that. Do better, guys. And yeah, so as I said, here is a map of who makes what. World potash production. This is 2008. That's changed, but as you can see, the U.S. is barely a blip. And if you can uh, have access to a resource that is going to be suddenly more expensive, I don't know. It's one to think about. So I don't like opining on politics, but yeah, um, tariffs are stupid, and people who like tariffs are stupid, and you will never find economists who think they're a good idea. Politicians think they're a good idea because they're stupid and can't make it in business, and people on Wall Street make money off stupid people all the time. And this is just an idea that I had. I don't own this stock, and I don't plan on it unless it gets a lot cheaper because I think there are better ideas out there. But if you like to trade on the news and make money from stupid people also, then think about how people's stupid actions would affect companies, good or bad, and then you can sort of make your mind that way. Anyway, if you want to check out that previous video, I'll probably put it in the comments. And good luck.